Of course, we screen the troops. Loyalty isn't optional when they stand behind the commander-in-chief. It landed like a bullet in a chapel. Clean, loud, and unholy. A pause on set in the control room of the West Wing. Did he just... Yes, that was live. Oh my God. Pete Hegseth didn't flinch. His eyes held that same gleam he used on Fox panels. Half certainty, half performance. The host blinked, unsure whether to continue or cancel the segment on air. We needed the right presence, Pete said calmly, adjusting his tie. It's about projecting discipline, not ambiguity. Silence stretched thin. A tech producer whispered, did he just admit to ideological screening of soldiers? The senior editor leaned over the console. Kill the feed. We're already in commercial. Then pray no one clipped it yet. Too late. 5 hours later, America was on fire. Loyalty tests trended on every platform with a search bar. The 12-second clip, blunt, devastating, played on loop across every major network. CNN ran at top of the hour. MSNBC labeled it an open confession of authoritarian military practice. The Atlantic headlined it, the day the secretary betrayed the oath. Even Defense One published from discipline to dogma. What Hegseth just set in motion at Mar-a-Lago. Trump sat motionless before a screen. Play it again. Hegseth's voice boomed through marble walls. Loyalty isn't optional when they stand behind the commander-in-chief. Kash Patel cleared his throat. We could say he meant background checks. Standard procedure. Stephen Miller didn't blink. He said loyalty. We reframe it. There's nothing to reframe. It wasn't taken out of context. It was the whole damn context. Trump exhaled sharply. Tell Fox it was misinterpreted. Sir, it was live. The door swung open. A young aide entered, white as copy paper. The Times confirmed it. Soldiers were screened before Fort Bragg. They were selected based on political appearance. Trump turned slowly. You mean loyalty indicators? No, sir. Tattoos, social posts, MAGA hats. A vetting list. No one spoke. Shut it down, Trump muttered. Everything. At the Pentagon, a printed transcript lay untouched in the center of a long oak table. One advisor stared at it like it glowed. He said it like doctrine, she whispered. He said it like a standard, and now it's ours. Phones buzzed, screens flashed, an internal email pinged across half the Department of Defense with a subject line, urgent comms freeze. A press officer dropped her mug. On Capitol Hill, microphones lit up like flares. Congressman Michael Schwartz called for immediate hearings. Senator Tammy Baldwin released a statement before lunch. This administration has not only politicized our military, it has hollowed out its moral backbone. CNN booked constitutional lawyers within the hour. Former generals went live. One said, if we're building a loyalty-first military, then we're not defending a country. We're defending a man. A leaked internal memo from the Navy surfaced. We are not campaign assets. A former Marine tweeted, we took oaths to the Constitution, not a camera lineup. At the DOJ, one senior official watched the clip in silence. This isn't Congress's to fix, he said. Then whose? He looked up. It's judicial now. That afternoon, a Yale professor said authoritarian drift 3 times in 4 minutes on PBS. No one laughed. And somewhere far from the lights, the marble, the noise, Chief Justice John Roberts read the headline. Hegseth, loyalty isn't optional. He didn't sigh. He didn't frown. He tapped his desk once, then again, and a third time. 3 knocks, 1 meaning. The Republic had just been called to court. We're not soldiers. We're props. That's what they're turning us into. The voice came from inside the Pentagon, steady, clipped, resigned. A colonel dropped her resignation letter on the table, slid it across, and walked out without a handshake. 3 more followed that week. An internal report leaked just before noon. Fort Bragg participated in an image-based personnel review ahead of President Trump's appearance. Criteria included social media history, tattoo visibility, and known political affiliations. CNN ran it with a banner. Military says yes to loyalty tests. The New York Times published a detailed timeline of the sifting process. MSNBC brought in a retired 4-star. Where does this go? The anchor asked. The general didn't blink. We're one MAGA shop away from a coup at the Department of Defense. Phones vibrated nonstop. A junior official stormed into the general counsel's office, holding up DoD Directive 1344.10. It's right here in plain text. No active duty member may engage in partisan political activity. 0 exceptions. Intent matters. Intent was broadcast to millionaires with subtitles. Another officer flipped through a printout. They vetted based on flags and likes in uniform on duty during a public appearance with the president. Someone in the corner whispered, "That's a violation of the uniform code." Someone else added, "That's a violation of the Constitution." At the White House, the hallway outside the Situation Room looked like a press staging zone. Phones pressed to ears, laptops open on knees, aides whispering words they'd never spoken aloud before. Chain of command manipulation, political indoctrination, undue influence from the executive. Trump didn't come down that morning. He was pacing upstairs, rehearsing responses. It's loyalty, it's patriotism, it's common sense. But even his speechwriters struggled to turn political purity test into standard vetting. Across the river, in the stone chambers of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice John Roberts stood at the center of a long oak table. The room fell silent as he tapped his folder twice and looked around. This isn't about which party wins. This is about who commands the military and under what terms. Justice Elena Kagan raised a brow. Are we considering direct violation? Justice Alito leaned back. We've ruled on speech before, but military speech. Not like this, Roberts said. This is different. He lifted the Pentagon Directive 1344.10 between two fingers. This isn't speech. This is structure. The court clerk walked in with the file. Roberts v. Hegseth et al. Petition for constitutional review, submitted by independent counsel under emergency grounds. Ketanji Brown Jackson opened the report and read aloud. Preliminary evidence indicates a systematic attempt to curate military representation for political optics. Kagan leaned in. That's not just manipulation. That's theater. Roberts stood. It's spectacle weaponized against the Constitution. He turned toward the window, the Capitol dome reflecting in the glass. If the military becomes a campaign prop, we lose the republic, one rally at a time. Outside, protests swelled at the gates of the Pentagon. Veterans held up their dog tags. Some taped them to signs. I serve the flag, not a brand. On TikTok, a Marine in full dress uniform uploaded a 10-second clip. No, Mr. Hegseth, I didn't enlist to decorate your photo op. It hit 3 million views in 2 hours. Inside Fox News, producers scrambled to adjust the narrative. One editor shouted, "Cut the segment. No more sound bites." Another threw down a headline draft. Hegseth in hot water. Loyalty gaffe prompts court summons. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth was being prepped for legal response. His advisor handed him a folder and said, "They're citing the uniform code. They're quoting the directive word for word." Pete snorted. "I'm not on active duty. They're arguing moral command." He smirked. Let them bring robes to a war room." His phone buzzed. A one-line message from legal counsel. Roberts just greenlit the review. "You're being summoned." Pete laughed, tossed the phone down, and muttered, "Guess we're going to church." Cameras clicked like insects at war. Reporters huddled outside the marble steps of the Supreme Court. Their whispers tangled with the cold breeze of institutional tension. Inside, the benches filled slowly with murmurs of disbelief, apprehension, and something else, anticipation. Pete Hegseth walked in with a grin too wide to trust. His suit fit like it had been tailored for television, not trial. He scanned the room, tilted his chin slightly upward, and whispered to his attorney, "This is optics." "I know optics." His lawyer didn't smile. On the far bench, the 9 justices sat like carved judgment, motionless but aware. Roberts opened the docket, glanced once toward the press gallery, then straightened his papers. "Mr. Hegseth, this is not a trial of your words. It is a hearing for what those words moved." Pete leaned forward. "With respect, Chief Justice, this country needs loyalty. The world's a battlefield." Roberts didn't flinch. Was there a declaration of war? A pause. Was there combat? Another pause. There was only a camera crew. Muffled chuckles rose from the observer's row. Pete's face stiffened. Just a shade. His lawyer stood. Your Honors, precedent clearly states that the judiciary does not interfere with the tactical discretion of the Department of Defense, particularly during times of national unrest. Ketanji Brown Jackson adjusted her glasses. Which unrest justifies the vetting of a soldier's social media feed? The lawyer fumbled slightly. We maintain that any Secretary of Defense must possess latitude to ensure the optics of order. Sotomayor interjected. So you admit it was about optics? No, Your Honor, not merely optics, messaging. And who designed that message? Roberts asked. The lawyer hesitated. Pete answered, it was mine. I crafted the language. Because clarity is essential when you serve under a commander-in-chief. Elena Kagan smiled faintly. You mean a president? Yes, the president, Pete corrected. Roberts leaned forward. Mr. Hegseth, do you believe the military's loyalty is owed to the individual who holds office or to the principles that created that office? Pete blinked. I believe the commander-in-chief is the embodiment of the mission. Roberts tapped his gavel once. That's the answer we came to hear. Another paper slid across the bench. It was a letter and signed publicly but unmistakable. Justice Alito read aloud. As President of the United States, I assert that the executive holds supreme authority in shaping the presentation of armed forces during national appearances. Loyalty in such context is a matter of national messaging. The seal at the top, Office of Donald J. Trump. Kagan arched an eyebrow. So the president is now marketing the military? Outside, reporters tweeted furiously. Command or commercial began trending in under 10 minutes. Inside, Pete's lawyer sighed. We believe the president's discretion is protected. Roberts looked him straight in the eye. No clause protects idolatry. Silence. Then came the rustle of robes, the shuffling of pages, the signal that closing words would soon define the opening of something far larger. Roberts rose. This court will examine whether loyalty in a constitutional republic belongs to a man or to a mission. He paused, looked down, and whether that line was crossed, not with a gun, but with a microphone. Pete Hegseth adjusted his tie, but not out of nerves, out of habit. The room waited for him to explode, to falter. But he didn't. I never ordered discrimination, he began. I ordered discipline. He spoke clearly, each syllable like a drumbeat. A disciplined force doesn't confuse neutrality with cowardice. A disciplined force knows where it stands. Behind a flag, and the man elected to raise it. Justice Jackson leaned forward. You're redefining neutrality as weakness. No, Pete replied instantly. I'm restoring strength, and if some interpret clarity as threat, that's on them. His attorney stood, flipping through papers, eyes focused like a sniper's. Your Honors, we present a video recorded minutes before the president's arrival at Fort Bragg. These soldiers, hand-picked or not, chose to chant USA without coercion, without cue cards, without any script. A screen lit up behind the court, projecting a line of uniformed soldiers chanting in unison. USA, USA, USA. The room shifted. One journalist whispered, feels like a rally. Justice Kagan frowned. Do they chant policy too? Pete spoke before his lawyer could answer. No, but they chant pride. Patriotism isn't partisan. It's American. Sotomayor raised an eyebrow. Yet your previous statement connected loyalty to the commander-in-chief, not to the Constitution. Pete smirked. The commander-in-chief swears to uphold the Constitution. Supporting him supports the system. Roberts turned a page. So, dissenting from the president is dissenting from America? Depends how loud the dissent gets, Pete replied. And who's funding it? A few gasps. A few pens froze mid-sentence. Justice Roberts tapped the table once. Then again, we're not here to speculate on funding. We're here to determine whether your words and actions compromise the constitutional autonomy of the military. Pete's voice tightened, but stayed bold. I'm a patriot. I've bled for this flag, and yes, I believe a president deserves a military that believes in his mission. Justice Gorsuch chimed in. Belief doesn't override law. Neither does fear. Pete fired back. And right now, it's fear that's running this courtroom. His lawyer stepped in quickly, trying to cool the temperature. What my client means, he means what he said, Roberts interrupted, tone colder than marble. The room fell silent. Hegseth straightened again, clinging to composure. I gave the order to ensure readiness, not to exclude anyone based on belief. That clip taken out of context. That's not how military command works. Roberts didn't blink. We'll let context speak for itself. Pete leaned in. I'm a patriot. The Chief Justice didn't even look up. So was Benedict Arnold, until he wasn't. Justice Sotomayor flipped her legal pad, her tone sharp and focused. Mr. Hegseth, according to this document signed by your senior advisor, troops assigned to guard the inauguration were screened for alignment and optics. How do you define optics in a constitutional command structure? Pete glanced at his attorney, then replied, Public perception matters in maintaining order. Roberts interjected, Perception is not policy, and neither is paranoia. A ripple of unease passed through the courtroom. Jackson followed with precision. Do you believe a soldier who voted Democrat was less capable of defending a Republican president? No. Pete answered too quickly. Kagan pressed. Then why was voter affiliation included in the Fort Bragg screening criteria? Pete hesitated. It was context threat analysis. Roberts leaned forward. Context doesn't override constitutional limits. You ran a loyalty test on your own armed forces. Pete's face flushed. I never said that. You didn't need to, Roberts shot back. You institutionalized it. Justice Barrett, who had remained silent, looked up. Was there ever a second review process? Any attempt to correct the initial screenings? Pete's attorney spoke up. We had internal discussions that were ignored, Barrett replied calmly. According to 3 memos, your office instructed personnel to hold course until after optics stabilized. What does that even mean, Mr. Hegseth? Pete shifted in his seat. We were in crisis mode. Roberts' voice dropped. Constitutional fidelity isn't optional during crisis. It is tested by it. He stepped away from the bench and faced the chamber. Let the record show no foreign actor caused this instability. No hostile power ordered these screenings. It came from within, from a culture more concerned with image than allegiance to law. A murmur spread across the audience. Justice Kagan added, You turned uniforms into filters and filtered loyalty into fear. Pete tried one last offense. I followed the tone set by the commander-in-chief. Roberts met his gaze. And when that tone contradicted the law, what did you follow? Pete didn't answer. Roberts closed the folder slowly, deliberately. The United States military was designed to outlast political tides. You try to bend it into a wave. That wave collapsed on our credibility, on our alliances, on the men and women sworn to defend the country. And you still called it leadership. He paused just long enough for the words to sting. Then history will not misquote your silence. Pete's jaw tightened, but no one offered him the chance to reply. For in that moment, the courtroom didn't need more noise. It had already heard the verdict, delivered in every shaken soldier, every recalled shipment, every vote of no confidence inside the department. And Roberts knew it. He walked back to the bench and whispered almost too quietly to catch. Impact echoes louder than slogans ever could. The courtroom dimmed slightly as the lights lowered for the screen. Roberts nodded once. The screen lit up. Fort Bragg. A line of soldiers stood at attention. Then pause. Zoom in. A staff sergeant walked behind the line, whispering to another soldier. A clipboard was exchanged. Voiceover played from a leaked internal recording. Yeah, we gotta move the trans soldier. Doesn't match the photo set. You serious? Command wants a certain look. The silence in the courtroom turned brittle. Pete Hegseth crossed his arms. This is theater. You're showing edited footage. Roberts didn't blink. That soldier received the same weapons training, the same discipline, the same oath, but your office moved him like a misplaced lamp in a stage home. Pete leaned forward. You're implying things that aren't in any directive. A man in uniform stood up from the witness bench. Colonel Reed, retired, formerly stationed at Fort Bragg. I was there. The directive wasn't written. It was whispered, and it spread faster than any memo. Justice Kagan leaned in. Did you comply? I objected, Reed replied. Next week, I was reassigned. Roberts turned to the bench. Let the record show internal dissent was not punished with debate. It was punished with exile. Pete's lawyer stood. This is a witch hunt. Roberts didn't raise his voice. No, this is a mirror. You're just afraid of what it reflects. Another video clip played. A private Fort Bragg gift shop. MAGA hats stacked behind the counter. Trump 2024 patches beside rank insignia. Justice Jackson tapped her pen. Was this approved? Pete hesitated. It wasn't prohibited. So through the line between military duty and campaign merchandise blurred under your watch, she pressed. Pete gestured vaguely. There are soldiers who support the president. There are citizens who support NASCAR, Roberts snapped. But we don't put race cars on the Pentagon lawn. The room shifted. That line hit hard. Justice Barrett turned to the page. According to DD Directive 1344.10, military personnel are strictly prohibited from engaging in partisan activities while on duty. Roberts echoed calmly. Not even the commander-in-chief is allowed to recruit applause. The oath is to the Constitution, not to a campaign. Pete clutched the edge of the table. This is about loyalty. Roberts nodded. And your version of loyalty is selective. You filtered it through flags, slogans, and rally optics. But the Constitution isn't a vibe. It's a boundary. One you crossed. The final image on screen. A female soldier holding a folded flag, standing beside a coffin. A caption underneath. Dismissed from ceremony. Image didn't match. Roberts let the moment breathe. He leaned in, eyes locked on Pete. You built a military of mirrors polished for one man's reflection. And now that glass is cracking. The temperature in the chamber shifted. An almost imperceptible drop that made the air feel thinner, the walls closer, the silence heavier. Roberts set his pen down, not with drama, but with a deliberateness that told the room they were reaching the marrow of the matter. Pete Hegseth, once buoyant with defiance, now leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the wood with a rhythm too erratic to be confident. His lawyer stood. Your Honors, he began, his voice polished but tense. In light of the nature of today's proceedings and the clear political overtones, we respectfully request a recess. Pending further review of the court's jurisdiction. Roberts didn't blink. Denied. The gavel didn't strike. He didn't need it. The authority in his voice carried more finality than any piece of mahogany ever could. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. On CNN's breaking banner, Roberts dismantles Trump loyalist. MSNBC rolled the headline. Cracks in a wall. Hegseth cornered in loyalty trial. Inside, Roberts turned another page. Mr. Hegseth, he said, cool as steel. You testified under oath that your loyalty was to the Constitution. Pete nodded, lips pressed. Then answer me this. If this court rules that your actions constituted a breach of military ethics and constitutional protocol, will you abide by our ruling? Pete opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I don't take orders from judges, he finally said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It rang like a bell. Roberts leaned forward, elbows on the bench. You do now. A low gasp passed through the room like wind through dry grass. Even Fox News paused its crawl. For once, there was nothing to spin. From his phone, Pete's lawyer checked his messages. One buzzed louder than the rest. A statement from Trump sent to select media outlets. Crafted with the usual theatrical flair, but missing one critical component, a name. Stand strong. The movement must prevail. Silence is strategy. Not once did it say, Pete. Roberts watched the lawyer's hand tremble as he set the phone down. No reinforcement coming? Roberts asked mildly. The lawyer stayed seated. Pete's face had changed. The brash certainty gave way to something unfamiliar. Calculation, not conviction. Justice Sotomayor cleared her throat. Mr. Hegseth, did you consult with legal counsel before implementing selective unit appearances behind a president? I was following leadership's direction. Leadership, she pressed. Pete fumbled. Command level coordination. Which command? Not military, not legal. That leaves political. He reached for his water. The cup hit the table louder than it should have. Justice Kagan stepped in. Did you review Directive 1344.10 before authorizing troop deployment at the rally site. I had staff brief me. Roberts raised a brow. Did they brief you on the part where military involvement in partisan events is prohibited by law? Pete exhaled. They noted sensitivities. And you ignored them, Roberts said. A pause. Yes, Pete admitted. The court clerk dropped her pen. Thank you, Roberts replied. There was no sarcasm in his voice, only precision. The atmosphere in the room had calcified. No one fidgeted. No one whispered. It was the kind of moment that seals reputations, for better or worse. From the bench, Roberts nodded to the staffers flanking him. We'll take this record as evidence of operational intent in disregard for standing federal directives. Pete stared ahead, but his eyes were now searching for exits. Outside, the press surged. NBC, Trump's man falls without a net. The Washington Post, Supreme Showdown shakes Magiasaur. Still, Trump remained silent. The man who'd once tweeted a 20-part thread about a crooked coffee maker hadn't spared a syllable for the soldier who filtered his rallies for optics. Roberts tapped the table gently. One final question, Mr. Hegg, he said. Do you believe your service elevated or undermined civilian confidence in the military? I defended the commander-in-chief and the Constitution. Pete hesitated. Roberts didn't. That's the difference. The line didn't thunder. It didn't have to. It landed like cold steel against bare skin, exactly where it was meant to cut. Pete adjusted his tie, suddenly too tight. The fall was quiet. No cameras were allowed in the chamber that morning. Not by law, but by tone. The benches filled early. The room was dense with anticipation, but silent, as if the air itself had been instructed to withhold noise. Reporters took their seats with unusual care. No one spoke, no rustling papers. Even the court clerk stopped typing. Roberts entered. No one rose. He had waived the formality. Today was not a day for rituals. It was a day for reckoning. Pete Hegg sat at the defendant's table alone. His lawyer had stepped back, a formality that felt more like abandonment. No more statements, no more motions, just breath and consequence. Roberts didn't open a folder. He didn't shuffle papers. He looked straight ahead. No grand voice, no gavel, just one line. This court finds the defendant in breach of constitutional duty. No gasp, no whisper, just that sentence as flat and sharp as a blade laid on glass. Pete bowed his head. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't noble. It was small. A movement that didn't shake the table, didn't command respect. Just happened. No one approached to escort him. No one stood. There were no handcuffs, no guards, no orders. The fall was not physical. It didn't need to be. Outside, reporters waited for something. Anything. A wave, a shout, a denial, a smirk. None came. Pete stepped outside and walked past the microphones. No statement, not even a look. The motorcade never arrived. At Fort Bragg that same hour, a low-ranking officer unlocked the front display of the base's public outreach center. The MAGA recruitment booth, red hats, filtered banners, tailored displays had been up for months. Today, quietly, he unscrewed the brackets holding the signage. The last piece to come down was a poster. Loyalty is our uniform. He folded it, didn't rip it, didn't burn it, just folded it once, twice, then slid it into a plain box. Back at the Supreme Court, the justices rose, one by one. No fanfare, no applause, only gravity. Roberts remained seated for a moment longer. Justice Sotomayor leaned toward him. Was that enough? It was what the Constitution asked for, he said. Kagan exhaled softly. Not even a full sentence. Roberts offered a ghost of a smile. Some verdicts don't need volume. In the press room, MSNBC's analysts stared into the camera. There is no fire today, no fury, just a door quietly shutting behind a man who thought the law was optional. On Twitter, a single clip was circulating. Not of Pete, not of the verdict, but of the officer removing the MAGA banner. Someone had set it to soft piano music. The caption read, "When loyalty forgets the Constitution doesn't forget back." Within minutes, the video hit 1 million views. Back at Fort Bragg, a soldier walked past the now empty booth. He paused, looked at the freshly cleaned space, then saluted. No one in particular, just the absence. Somewhere in Mar-a-Lago, a message was drafted, scrapped, and redrafted again. Trump never sent it, and the world didn't wait. That evening, PBS ran a special segment, Flags and Men, the reckoning of political uniforms. No dramatic music, no breaking graphics, just an image of Pete's back as he exited the courthouse. No guards, no crowd, no cheers, only the marble echo of footsteps leaving a chamber where truth had outlasted voice. Some leaders shout, others swear oaths. Only one of them remembers what it means. Fade to black. In a democracy, power doesn't just come from winning. It comes from remembering why you lead in the first place. Pete Hegseth's downfall wasn't just about one quote, one slip, or one televised offense. It was about a line that once crossed dragged everything behind it into the spotlight. Loyalty, as he misunderstood it, became the rope that snapped back. Not because it was loud, but because it was misdirected. The Supreme Court never raised its voice. The Constitution never changed its font. The law didn't need a stage. It had memory. This case reminded the country of something deeper than politics. That institutions are not meant to worship people, but to protect principles. Soldiers don't wear uniforms to cheer. Judges don't speak to applause. And when a nation begins filtering its defenders by political devotion, it stops defending its people. It starts defending a man. That's the line Hegseth crossed. And Roberts, without fanfare, walked the public back across it. This wasn't a story about treason. It wasn't even about Trump. It was about silence. The silence of those who saw things and said nothing. The silence of troops repositioned not for war, but for image. The silence of commanders afraid to question what loyalty had come to mean. But silence can cut both ways. Sometimes it protects cowards. Sometimes it shelters truth. The silence in that courtroom, the absence of cheers, the missing motorcade. That was the kind of silence that speaks volumes. No tweet, no rebuttal, no rewrite. The verdict stood because it didn't perform. It simply was. In a country addicted to noise, what stood out most was the absence of it. That's the lesson. When institutions stand quietly, firmly, and clearly, they speak louder than the ones who shout. That's what stayed. Not the slogans, not the banners, not even the defendant. What stayed was the Constitution, unmoved, unshaken, unbought. And for the first time in years, the country stopped yelling and listened.